major operation today in San Joaquin County and Stanislaus County. Clubhouses belonging to the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. They were raided by the cops.
The FBI has just destroyed one of the most dangerous biker cartel alliances in America. What began as a midnight raid on a trucking company in Chicago has exposed a hidden drug pipeline stretching from the Mexican border to the Great Lakes. Agents say the network used biker-run freight firms to move cartel products north, synthetic powder disguised as auto parts, cash hidden in refrigerated trucks. On paper, it looked like interstate commerce. In reality, it was an industrial-scale narcotics corridor controlled by the Hells Angels and supplied by the Sinaloa Cartel. Investigators now believe this system moved hundreds of millions in drugs and cash across North America, a logistics empire built by bikers, refined by cartels, and protected by violence. Under direct orders from the White House, Homeland Security task forces launched coordinated strikes in 5 states. Chicago was the first and the bloodiest.
A mountain of meth and other drugs, including cocaine, MDMA, and fentanyl, protected by an arsenal of weapons, everything from handguns to assault rifles, some loaded and ready to use.
By sunrise, 6 suspects were dead, more wounded, and 1 warehouse reduced to ash. Among the weapons recovered, Belgian rifles and encrypted radios traced back to Mexico's cartel arsenals.
I just saw a bunch of cop cars, there's SWAT trucks.
Authorities say this was only the beginning. One strike in a campaign designed to dismantle the alliance between outlaw bikers and Mexican cartels. Tonight, we're going inside that raid, the tactics, the seizures, and the intelligence trail linking Chicago's bikers to Mexico's cartels. Because this operation isn't just about drugs, it's about who controls America's highways.
Because I'm telling you, this is the beginning. The fuse is lit, and they made a big mistake.
In May 2025, the FBI launched coordinated raids across Chicago and several U.S. cities, a nationwide crackdown targeting outlaw motorcycle gangs tied to the Hells Angels. Federal agents described the operation as a decisive move to dismantle violent criminal networks with alleged links to Mexico's Cjng and Sinaloa cartels, both accused of fueling America's drug and weapons trade. By dawn, the mission had a name, Operation Iron Horse, and its reach became unmistakable. Federal teams moved in as warrants dropped across 6 locations tied to the same biker-run logistics network, 2 in Chicago, others in Joliet, Gary, and Rockford. The FBI's Violent Crimes Task Force led the breach, supported by ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Chicago Police Department.
Elite police squads are ramping up the war on organised crime bosses, raiding headquarters, busting down doors, and locking up foot soldiers.
The targets were a chain of freight companies registered under shell corporations connected to Hells Angels affiliates. They recovered narcotics, weapons, and electronic data linking the suspects to cross-border trafficking routes.
Also tonight, weekend raids turned up illegal drugs and several guns at 2 homes in Nash County. According to the sheriff's office, deputies seized 378 doses of pressed fentanyl pills and several loaded guns.
But that wasn't all. Agents also seized nearly $1 million in cash and several high-end vehicles used to mask transport routes.
We've seized over 60 firearms, money, vehicles.
These are not just statistics. Every dollar seized represents money that will no longer fuel criminal activity. Every drug taken off the street represents a potential life saved.
Financial analysts believe the network moved far more, possibly hundreds of shipments a month, through legitimate interstate carriers. Behind the scenes, the FBI coordinated with Homeland Security task forces, the same framework now used nationwide to connect cartel cases with domestic gang investigations. Every seized phone and ledger feeds directly into those databases, linking Chicago's bikers to suppliers in Canada and financiers overseas.
They made a big mistake acting like a bunch of assholes out there, because now the full force of the federal government, state government, county government, and municipalities are coming down on them.
While Chicago grabbed headlines, similar warrants dropped within 24 hours across the country, targeting biker clubhouses, warehouses, and known cartel couriers.
The FBI has carried out raids at Hells Angels clubhouses in Massachusetts.
A Hells Angel motorcycle club in downtown Modesto is raided by FBI agents and local law enforcement officers today.
FBI, Westport Police, and Massachusetts State Police gang unit on the property of Hells Angels clubhouses.
In California's Central Valley, 2 Hells Angels clubhouses were raided under warrants citing acts of violence and suspected drug distribution.
But we're told armed officers searched multiple locations, from San Joaquin to Stanislaus counties. The FBI also involved. In a statement saying the search warrants were in relation to, quote, acts of violence involving outlaw motorcycle gang members.
Federal prosecutors say the Chicago bust built on years of investigations, from San Diego's narcotics conspiracy cases to ongoing synthetic powder probes in Ontario and Alberta. Together, they outline a pattern of outlaw motorcycle clubs acting as middlemen for cartel logistics.
Corners of the country represented: Quebec, Ontario, Alberta.
Inside the recovered phones, agents found shipping schedules matching legitimate freight deliveries, proof that criminal cargo was being hidden among real commerce. It's the kind of overlap investigators call the gray economy, where legal and illegal trade move through the same lanes. For federal agents, Operation Iron Horse was more than a takedown. It was confirmation that cartel supply chains had fused with domestic trucking and biker logistics. And that fusion, officials warn, is what makes the next phase of this investigation even more dangerous. The Chicago raid exposed more than contraband. It revealed a system. Hidden behind the walls of that warehouse was a template copied across North America, a network of biker chapters operating like a corporate supply chain, built for speed, secrecy, and control. What began decades ago as a brotherhood of riders has mutated into a globalized machine. The leather jackets and clubhouses are still there, but behind them now stand accountants, brokers, and transport specialists fluent in logistics and laundering.
Take a good, hard look at the table in front of you. Is that something that a gentleman's motorcycle club or any club would reasonably possess?
They found cash in searches like this bundle of $50 bills worth $20,000. Police allege money flowed to purchase 7 properties around southern Ontario.
The Hells Angels didn't just survive law enforcement pressure. They adapted, turning their rebellious culture into a business model. Federal investigators say that model depends on one thing above all: infrastructure. They own the trucks, the warehouses, the repair shops, and the back rooms of shipping firms that move freight across borders every day. For cartels, that's gold. The Angels offered something Mexican syndicates couldn't replicate on U.S. soil: a built-in distribution network with plausible deniability.
We are a bunch of nice guys and we enjoy riding motorcycles. Well, they're trying to sell us off as a criminal organization.
Intelligence analysts point to a timeline that starts years before the Chicago operation. By the late 2000s, biker chapters in Canada had already evolved into major players in synthetic drug distribution. Their dominance over key transport corridors, from Vancouver to Montreal, gave them a lot of access to huge amounts of cash.
Michelle, we're talking about $160 million. That's how much police say flowed through this sports website. And even as authorities were trying to shut it down, the people behind it were diversifying their investments,
which gave them leverage in negotiations with foreign suppliers. Then came the Sinaloa cartel.
Huge quantities of meth and fentanyl. Investigators also seizing thousands of kilograms of precursor chemicals, specifically chemicals used in a process tied to Mexican cartels.
Journalist Katarina Schultz, reporting in Dangerous Alliance, describes how Sinaloa's Los Chapitos faction quietly embedded itself in Canada, outsourcing transport and distribution to local groups. The Angels were the natural partner, organized, mobile, and already armed with the logistics to move tons of contraband without triggering border alarms. Canadian authorities now call that network the Northern Pipeline, a fentanyl route stretching from coastal super labs to the U.S. border. For years, it operated in plain sight, using legitimate trade infrastructure as camouflage. A refrigerated truck carrying produce from Ontario to Illinois could also conceal compressed synthetic powder bricks, or, in some cases, humans. For investigators, every truck was a coin toss between commerce and catastrophe.
There's people in the cab. There's people in the cab? Yes, sir. Hey, listen. I'm trying to be honest with you. Okay.
30 people have been arrested and more than 200 charges laid after a large-scale investigation across Ontario that targeted drug trafficking and stolen vehicles.
The Chicago evidence mirrored that pattern with Canadian manifests, identical packaging, and financial transfers routed through the same holding companies seen in previous Sinaloa-linked busts. What seemed like an isolated operation was, in truth, one branch of a continental enterprise.
The fact that they are here, I will say thriving, it is dangerous for sure.
Journalist Luis Najera investigated the cartels in Mexico and fled to Canada. He sees their growing influence here, with criminal groups exploiting Pacific and Atlantic ports and laundering millions.
Both organizations thrive on compartmentalization, cells that can operate independently, yet move under a shared banner of profit. That system is what the FBI now targets under its transnational gang strategy, dismantling the connective tissue that lets domestic gangs act as extensions of foreign cartels.
Deputies raided a local motorcycle club. You can see here in the video this as investigators go after a number of people.
With thousands of active gang investigations across the country and new Homeland Security task forces linking federal, state, and cross-border intelligence, officials are mapping the biker empire in the same way they once mapped the mafia.
The objective is to unify, collect the evidence under one procedure and have one group examine it. So digital forensics, phones, iPads, whatever's in there on the warrant.
What they're finding through digital forensics isn't a chain of command. It's a franchise model, self-sufficient chapters, bound by ideology, not hierarchy, making them harder to dismantle and easier to replace. The warehouse in Chicago was only one cell in that franchise, but its fall cracked open the blueprint of how a culture built on loyalty and defiance turned into one of the most resilient narcotics logistics networks in North America. What the FBI quickly realized was the trail they followed from Chicago doesn't stop at the Great Lakes. It runs north, across Michigan, through Ontario, into the quiet industrial towns of Quebec, where the Sinaloa cartel found something it could never fully control in Mexico: stability. Over the last 5 years, U.S. and Canadian investigators have watched the cartel's reach extend beyond the southern border. The evidence tells a clear story: new routes, new partners, and a shift in production that turned Canada into a hub for synthetic opioids.
This is what police say Mexican drug cartels are slipping into Canada: $83 million worth of cocaine, destined for every corner of the country, and recently traced to a murderous cartel.
According to law enforcement briefings obtained by Canadian media, the Los Chapitos faction of the Sinaloa cartel quietly built its presence on the country's west coast, not through violence, but through investment.
They were prominent. I mean, if you look at what we have here right now, this is a large load.
Their operators are embedded in shipping companies, freight terminals, and chemical suppliers. By placing production closer to the U.S. market, the cartel cut costs, avoided southern border scrutiny, and reduced transport time by half.
The Mexican drug cartels are rapidly expanding in Canada, and that's a danger.
In 2024, a series of busts in British Columbia and Quebec exposed the scale of those operations.
Cartels are known to smuggle truckloads of drugs across the U.S. border and into Canada. But a recent bust in BC suggests they're also producing enough here to send abroad.
By the time the Northern Pipeline came into focus, the U.S. government was already moving to fight back. Inside the Department of Justice, a new generation of task forces now targets transnational criminal organizations, cartels, gangs, and hybrid networks that exploit the same trade systems legitimate commerce depends on. They call it the Homeland Security Task Force Initiative, or HSTF, a network designed to share intelligence in real time and strike criminal structures at every level.
My best example is the Virginia Homeland Security Task Force. We simply allowed access, placement, and location, and then we got out of the way, we being leadership. We are not running the cases in the field. Agents are. Intel analysts are synthesizing the intelligence, not me. And that's the beauty of the gang task force. The folks in there are experienced career operators at every level that they operate at. They know what they're doing.
According to federal briefings, the mission is broad: disrupt narcotics production, seize financial assets, dismantle human and weapons trafficking cells, and identify any gang or biker club acting as a foreign proxy. In practice, that means every major port, border region, and transport hub is now under multi-agency surveillance.
The SWAT team recovered multiple weapons from that house. Sheriff Chitwood says all of that evidence is now being turned over to the FBI as part of a much larger investigation into the club.
Officials describe the HSTFS as the backbone of a whole-of-government approach. They unite more than 2,000 special agents and nearly 4,000 task force officers under a single system. Each unit includes federal prosecutors, customs agents, and financial analysts working side by side.
Putting them in simply the same room and giving them some resources. We don't need to recreate or be super innovative.
The scale of the effort is unprecedented. More than 6,000 open cases now target transnational criminal organizations, with hundreds tied directly to cartel leadership or domestic affiliates like the Hells Angels. This new framework is more than a response to violence. It's a statement that organized crime, whether cartel or biker, will be treated not as isolated criminal activity, but as a threat to national security itself. By mid-2025, investigators realized the Northern Corridor wasn't controlled by a single cartel. Sinaloa had the roots, but another power was moving in, faster and far less predictable. Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, the CJNG. While Sinaloa perfected stealth, CJNG built speed. Intelligence briefings describe them as the most aggressively expanding narco organization in the Western Hemisphere, a cartel that favors disruption over diplomacy. In the past 3 years, U.S. task forces have traced CJNG-linked shipments through Texas, California, and increasingly, the Midwest. Chicago, already a distribution node for Sinaloa, has become contested ground.
Cartel has a presence in Chicago. Different cartels, certain groups have tentacles to hit Chicago. Whether they're actual cartel members or affiliated with the cartels, they transport large amounts of narcotics into the Chicago area, which is a distribution center basically for the whole Midwest.
Analysts say CJNG's strategy mirrors a corporate takeover, targeting territories weakened by federal raids, absorbing remnants of biker or street gang infrastructure left behind. Where the Hells Angels once dominated logistics, smaller splinter clubs have emerged, some allegedly repurposed by CJNG intermediaries for local transport and street-level sales. According to counter-narcotics analysts, the rivalry is less about ideology than infrastructure. Sinaloa controls ports, chemists, and the north-south freight chain. CJNG dominates speed, adaptability, and digital finance, using cryptocurrency and courier networks that change routes weekly. Both depend on American intermediaries, and both view Chicago as the crown jewel of the interior drug market. Officials in both Washington and Ottawa warn that as these organizations compete, violence could migrate north, following the same transport lanes used for trade. For the FBI and Homeland Security, the challenge is no longer simply identifying who controls what, but predicting who will next. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It helps this channel keep digging into the stories others won't touch. And drop a comment below. Was this crackdown the end of the Hells Angels/Sinaloa pipeline, or just the start of its next evolution with CJNG?